Welcome back to the Wizard Shop. We're going to give you guys a little shop update and some information on some of these cars you guys have been asking about. And then we're going to have a little surprise at the end, right after this. Well, it's a cold month of January. Here we are in the shop, and we have a few cars on the line here that we're working on now that a lot of commenters have been very interested in. They want to know, what is that car doing in the shop? Talk about that car. Well, that's what we're going to do today. We're going to go down the line, talk about a few things I've got going on, and like I said, we'll end with a little surprise. It's pretty cool. So, let's start with this one. You guys have heard of Euro-Asian Bob. He sells lots of really cool cars. This is one of his cars. This is an '83 Jaguar XJ6. That is a little dirty right now because it got towed on a trailer up here, but otherwise it is in very good shape. He was having issues with it when he would be driving it, that the right fuel tank, and yes, it has two fuel tanks, one on the left, one on the right. The right tank would overflow and just start doing a Niagara Falls of gasoline down the side of the car, and that doesn't bode well if something were to catch fire. So we've got that narrowed down, we figured it out, and I'm going to show you guys what we've done. So, being that there's two tanks on this car, and it is fuel injected, there's little valves, little solenoid valves that close off one tank and open up another tank, so it can run off of that one, or this one. And the problem on this car is those solenoids have failed, and when you go to switch tanks, it starts dumping fuel where it shouldn't, or pulling fuel where it shouldn't, and you start having the overflow. Here's one of those valves. It's actually in the wheel well here. Just a little electrically operated fuel solenoid.
Gosh, Car Wizard, that looks really crusty.
Yeah, this one doesn't even work anymore. You put power to it, it doesn't click, it does nothing. It's permanently sealed off. That was one of the problems. As you can see, there's the new one. We're just now buttoning it up. We got to bolt it to the side there, screw it in, I guess. Put everything back together, but we're going to double check and make sure it all works before we do that. We've got that one on. Let's take a look in the trunk. You can see that there's one by the spare tire. It diverts from one tank to the other as far as the intake for the fuel pump. We've got that replaced. And there's another solenoid on this side in this wheel well, just like the other side, that we've also replaced. So we're getting ready to put the fuel back in it and check it out and see how it does. I'm 99% sure that will solve the problem because the valves weren't even working at all. Let's take a look at the interior of this real quick, and then we'll move on down the line. As you can see, we have the center console apart because we're checking the fuel valve. There's a switch for the fuel valves. Checking power and grounds and making sure that that was all working properly, and it was. So once we get back together on that, we'll have the dash back together. If you look around though, it's not beat up. It's in really good shape. It's got 81,000 original miles on this thing, as you can see on the odometer. Those are actual documented miles. The seats are not shredded. The dash is not cracked. And when it does run, it runs great. So, another cool car from Euro-Asian, and they're in Wichita. Check him out if you're looking for a cool car. You'll find one. Here we have Tyler's Ferrari 348. You guys have already seen the video that he did on this when he revealed what we did. We did the fuel injectors. We did a speedometer sensor, transducer on the gearbox, and we also put a thermostat in it because it was overcooling. It was not allowing it to get an operating temperature. It's actually done. It's just waiting to be picked up. Tyler's been busy. He's got other things going on, but he will be here to pick that up and go enjoy the car. It's ready to go. So that's where we're at with that. It's just sitting here waiting to be picked up.
Hey, Car Wizard, isn't there an interesting story about the car seats?
They look odd, they look weird, and that was the style choice that he chose. But there's an interesting story to the fabric, if you haven't watched the video already. These are actually out of a Greyhound bus. That's bus fabric. And the interesting story is this building that we're in right now, since the 60s, has been a factory building parts for buses, Greyhound buses, like the seats and interior and different things. And they had a bunch of fabric left over when this business closed, and this fabric got sold to an upholstery guy here in town years ago. Well, Tyler wanted the seats redone, the guy says, hey, I've got all this upholstery that actually came from the building that your car's being worked on in. So here they are. It's been reupholstered from fabric that originally came out of this building probably 20 or 30 years ago. Really crazy. Kind of odd, but they look all right. This is a 1990 Volkswagen Corrado G60. I have the grille off right now because we're fixing one of the 3 problems it has. It's the hood latches won't unlatch. We're working with that right now, trying to figure out what's going on. We got the hood open by removing the grille and getting in there and got it all taken care of to get it opened. But we're trying to figure out what to do to make it where you can open it normally with the latch. This has the little 4-cylinder in it, but the interesting thing is that it's supercharged from the factory. Let me show you guys. Right here is an assembly, which is the belt-driven supercharger. You can see the weird-looking belt setup down there. So it's really interesting to be from the factory, supercharged, puts out pretty good power. The second issue was an exhaust leak. It sounded really bad when it was running, and I diagnosed it and found the problem. Let's take a look. I got the issue shown over here. In the past, somebody installed this exhaust system, and everything from the engine all the way back to the tailpipe was solid welded. You could see here. There were no flanges to unbolt. There was no way to get this out. So with the customer's okay, when him understanding what was going on, I was able to cut it right here and remove the manifold. One of these flanges was just clearly broken off. I welded the flange back on so it won't do that again. I also took care of the other 3 so that they don't break off as well. An exhaust shop was going to do this for him, but they wanted a lot of money. And they said, oh, this has to be replaced. And I said, no, it doesn't have to be replaced. I can weld it and he'll be back in business. Somebody has already welded the rest of the exhaust. What's it going to hurt to weld that? So I got it all welded. We're going to get this back in, and that'll take care of his exhaust leak. The last issue at hand is to get his AC working. The compressor has an issue. We're going to get that replaced, get his AC working, and he'll be back in business. So that's why this is here, and that's a little bit of the story on the car. Let's move on down the line. And if you're a Hoovy's Garage fan, you've seen this before. This is Tyler's 1987 Volvo 760 Wagon stick turbo. It's basically what they call a turbo brick. There really aren't any of these around anymore, and this one's in pretty good shape. It could use some work, some body work or painting and things of that nature. It's not perfect, but the fact that you can't even find these anymore is what makes this car really cool. It's a stick shift turbo wagon. It's in here to get belts replaced. That also will get his AC running again. We've actually got all that done. New struts up front, fix a few oil leaks, some tires, and get him back on the road. Let's take a look at the engine and we'll take a look inside. Here's the cute little turbo. And it is just a 4-cylinder engine. As you can see, we put new belts on it. It's a 2.3 liter inline 4 turbocharged, puts out pretty good power. There's some things like this is kind of rigged. It's not a very good, there's stuff going on in there, but Hoovy just wants it running and driving and safe. He's not restoring this car, and I don't blame him for not wanting to just restore. You can get really expensive really fast. Let's take a look at the interior. The seats are nice, they're not all cracked up. And there's the stick shift, guys. The little red button is overdrive. That was factory. You click it in and out of overdrive with that. It's got 167,000 miles on it. Pretty high, but not too high. For what it is and what he paid, it's actually a pretty decent car. The back the seats are just as nice. Not all cracked or beat up. But it's a hoopty, guys. It's not a fully restored museum piece. It's a hoopty. It's one of his cars in his hoopty fleet. Okay, well, let's move on down the line. We've got a few more to go, and then we'll have the surprise at the end. You guys have seen this in the shop for a while. This is the Lotus Esprit Turbo S4S, a 1995 model. We saw that it had a blown head gasket, and we believe it was overboost. We've got the head off. We've got the water pump out and sent out. It was held in customs for unreal amount of time over in England. And finally they released it, and now it's back to S&J parts, where they're going to rebuild the water pump and then send all the parts here so I can finally reassemble the engine. It's just a waiting game. Getting these parts has been a long waiting game. You can't find these parts on a lot of stuff. S&J is the only way to go. So that's where we're at with this. We're waiting. Got one more car on this row. Let's move over there. This is a 2007 Mercedes CL550. It's in really good shape. And it really isn't in here for a whole lot of work other than check the battery, do an inspection. And they had an issue, or they just had the intake manifold replaced somewhere else. And all of a sudden there's a check engine light, and it's low on power. And I scanned it for codes and found that it had the left cam solenoid issue going on, which would explain the low on power. A common issue in these is low on oil. Low on oil. I pulled the dipstick, it didn't even register, and they said it just had an oil change. I'm like, wow. So I put oil in, proper oil in it, back in it till it was up on the full mark on the dipstick. I cleared the codes, went and drove it. It's completely happy again. Just totally runs great. It didn't like not having enough oil. That's a common issue on any car, a Mini Cooper, a Mercedes, a BMW, a Ford, a Chevy. Any of these cars that uses engine oil to actuate the cam phasers or cam adjusters, if you run it low on oil, it starts sucking air, it can't operate the cam adjusters. If you start having those issues, check your engine oil. You might be just low on oil, just like this one. Let's head over to Junior Mint and see what he's up to. You guys have seen videos in the past that I've worked on a 2003 Lamborghini Murcielago, a silver one. And it's a guy named Leo. You've seen him in the video. He owns this chopper. It's a custom chopper. It's got a Harley motor, but the bike itself, it's not a Harley, it's not a Victory. It's completely handmade custom. So there is really not a name to call it. It's been sitting for a long time. He had it in storage, and he regrets that, but he's like, I want to get this thing back on the road. I've worked myself on a lot of motorcycles. I decided to get a lift and start working on bikes. Now, I'm not going to do engine teardowns and major, huge jobs on them, but you got a bike, you need some work, it's leaking oil, it's not charging, something like that. I'm going to start getting into fixing motorcycles. Right now we're getting the carburetor off. The fuel is really bad in it. We're going to rebuild the carburetor. We did some work on the forks. It's got an Evo 1340 motor on it. It's fairly new. He'd had this at a place before to get worked on, and I don't know they did a very good job. Like this bolt here is loose. This is for the rear caliper. There's stuff like that all over this bike, stuff loose, and it's just like, wow, that wasn't caught, or they didn't find that, or these forks were misaligned and were actually had slidden out where it clamps up there. We got them back lined back up. This is the Springer front end. Got them lined back up, clamped back down, and the front end is happy again. This is a really cool bike. I mean, everything on here, it's not factory made except for the motor and whatnot. It's got a belt primary. Solid rear end, or hardtail, I guess you would call it. Custom seat, custom handlebars, all kinds of custom paint. We got the tanks and everything off. We're going to clean those out and get the fuel system taken care of. Oh, and also we're going to redo the clutch. Put new clutch steels and clutches in it. That's not the surprise though. We have one more thing to go. Let's head over to the surprise that I'm going to reveal to you guys. We have the little 350 diesel sitting over there. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with that yet, but I would like to swap that into something. But if any of you watch the channel, watch JR Go, you'll know that he's got a late 70s Rolls-Royce Silver Shadow that he's putting an LS motor into it. He's swapping and doing a complete LS swap, nitrous. It's crazy. Head on over to John Ross's channel, watch JR Go. You can watch the whole swap as it happens. However, he pulled the motor and all the transmission and stuff out of it. It was perfectly running drivetrain. He was like, I don't need this anymore. I said, I'll take it. Don't throw it away. I told him I'll take it. I want you guys to list in the comments. I'd like to do my own swap with this. What do you guys think would be a really cool vehicle to put this into? This is a 6.75 liter Rolls-Royce V8. They only have like 200, 220 horsepower, but they have a lot of torque, like 400 or more pounds of torque. It's basically a big block. It's not really as big as a big block, but it's not a small block. I also have the transmission that came out of it. A whole bunch of parts he included with the, he just dropped them off at the shop. He was like, here, have at it, wizard, he said. So this is the surprise. This is really cool. I have some ideas of a 70s Camaro or an old 69 Chevy truck or something at Cars and Coffee, and you open the hood and there's a nice clean Rolls-Royce V8 in it. Wouldn't that be crazy, guys? So if you're interested in what kind of tools I use or want to purchase the tools that I use, check my Amazon affiliate page in the link below. We've got merchandise for sale. We also have many more cool videos to come. This is going to be a series we're going to do once we work out a car to put it into, or a truck. And hit the subscribe button if you want to check this out and you want to check out other videos that are coming out. You won't be disappointed. Thanks for watching.